So today what we're going to look at is the cylinder head. We've got a few valves that we need to replace. Those have now come in the mail order. And we've got some valve guides we need to replace. We need to give the whole thing a good clean up and a good coat of paint. It's very cold in the shop today, so I'm going to be using the propane torch to try and heat up the head where we put the valve guides in. And I'll probably end up using the hairdryer to help set the paint as well. As I say, it's starting to get to winter now. Very cold in the shop, so let's see what we can do to revitalize this cylinder head ready to go back onto the boat. Okay, so I've got my intake valve guide here, and it's got a little bit of residual oil on there from the manufacturing process. I'm going to give that a quick wipe off. Next, I'm going to give it a good spray with WD-40, and the reason for that is it's going to help it to actually slide into the head itself. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do is position it into the head, just like so, and then we're going to tap it down using a rubber mallet. So we're not going to use a hard hammer or anything like this because it will actually break it. We're going to just tap it down gently using a rubber mallet, and it should slide into place. So nice and gentle. Now I can feel that going down ever so gently into the head. I can actually feel it pass through my fingers here. That's coming through the other side how we expect it to, and yes, it's just starting to come through. Just move the camera around so you can see there. So as you can see, it's just starting to come in here, so we'll continue this process with a little squirt of something in there as well, and we will continue to tap that down. Okay, so I've got a small block here. Just going to position this over the top, make it nice and comfortable, and just gentle taps. So the idea behind this is that block will absorb most of the impact and stop it from breaking the top of the stem guide here. Let's see if that's making any difference. I'll have a look on the other side. And yeah, that's starting to just push through now. So bit more oil, keep things lubricated, and we'll continue. Okay, so just eyeballing that against the height of the other intake valve that I've got there, that looks to be about right. On the other side, it's actually showing through now, so you can't see, there we go, a little bit clearer. You can see it's pushing through. We've got a bit of a protrudence there, very similar to this side, so I don't want to push that through any further. What I'm going to do now is just do a quick double check. So we've got our intake valve, I'm going to slide that through. Theoretically that should slide right the way through to the other end. Let's just push that out, just give that tiny bit of lubrication rather than putting a dry valve in. There we go, that's better. We just push that in. Oh, there we go. Lovely. So that's sliding nicely now, making a really good close. But that's not the job complete. So where the valve sits on the inside of the cylinder top, you can see there's a bit of a beveled edge. So on each of these valves there is, let me find an old one to show you. So here's an old intake valve. There's a lip, a very thin, you can just see like a flat side to it. Now that flat side meets up with the flat side on the intake of each of these cylinder tops. If it's not completely sealed, what will happen is you'll end up with either an exhaust or an intake leak. That's why you see some cars smoking sometimes, because they have so much carbon buildup. You can see on some of these older ones, just where we've got, this one's got the old valve guide stuck to it as well. You can see the rust and the crud and the carbon. That will actually stop this from making a good seal. So the first step we do, even though we've got a brand new machined valve here, we need to actually mate these surfaces together and make sure that they're nice and smooth. And what we do is we use this cutting paste. So this is a very fine graphite, and I think it's graphite. What's in it? Not sure what's in it. Same sort of stuff that you get on sandpaper. Very, very thin fluid grease with bits in it basically. And what I'm going to do is just wipe that on the inside of that valve surface. So you can just see I'm just trying to get it off my finger onto the other side of the valve surface. We just spin that valve around a bit more, easier to put it on. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this cutting paste to seat the valve. So we're going to spin the valve inside the seat here, and all we're going to do, very much like sandpapering, we're just going to spin it round. So I'll show you in slow motion. I'm just going to twist the valve. All we're going to do is that sort of motion, and what it's doing is creating like a friction surface underneath here with that grit. You can actually feel the grit between your fingertips, and it creates a nice shiny surface. So we know that the valve is brand new and got a really nice machined surface. What we're trying to do is cut this inside edge, the beveled edge on the head itself, so that the valve sits neatly in it. Now, there are hand tools that you can use where you put a wooden stick with a rubber plunger on there and you basically rub it like a stick through your fingers, and it will gradually do that, and it takes hours and hours and hours. The way that I always do it is, if I just turn this back down, but again, just hold on to the valve because I don't want to crush it and I don't want it hitting the deck. What I do is I use a power drill on here very gently, and I just spin it nice and slowly one way and back the other way. So I'm going to grab the drill, we'll put it on there, and I'll just show you what it looks like. Once we've done that, we'll remove the valve and have a look at those seating bases and see if they're nice and shiny and making a good surface. Okay, so I've got my power drill. I'm going to put it on there nice and carefully. I'm not going to do it around the top of the valve here because I don't want to break that off. So move it down a little bit, just tighten that up around the stem. So I've got very little bit of upward and downward movement. You can probably hear it clicking. And all I'm going to do is gradually grind that in. So I'm just going to pull the drill up, let it meet the surface, down, up, down, up, down, and just keep doing that nice and slow. Okay, right, let's take the drill off. And let's pull that valve out now and have a look and see what it looks like underneath. So I'll tip it back up onto the side. There we go. I'm going to remove the valve completely. You can see the gunk is all slimed around the place where it's been spinning with that centrifugal force. So I'm going to pull that out. You can see on our valve there, we've got a cleanish area where it's been grinding, so I'm going to clean that off. Now on the brand new valve, it's going to be very difficult to see if that's actually cut a new channel or anything, because it's shiny anyway, but it feels okay. But what we're interested in is the cylinder head itself. So I'm going to clean some of that gunk off there, and let's see if we've got a nice smooth surface. So we're looking for any pitting, any gaps, anything that might stop that valve from closing nice and tight. And this actually looks quite good. I'm going to put a tiny bit WD-40 on there just to help clean that off, give that a wipe round. And you should be able to see there is a bit of a shiny surface on there. Now I can probably go a bit further. I could do this a bit more, and I probably will give it another shot. But if I just take the phone here a bit closer. So this is what we're looking for here. This surface, can you see that nice thin line that's going around there? You can see it just in the center of my fingertip there. That's a nice smooth bevel all the way around. So this valve is going to push back in there, and the bevel on here that you see on here will match up with the bevel on there, and will give us a nice smooth close. Okay, now the way to test to see if that is actually going to work properly is we're going to withdraw the valve and see if we can make it pop. What I'm going to do is just withdraw the valve until the top of the valve stem is against my finger on the other side. Got my finger pushing on the top of the valve, that makes a seal. When I pull that out, we're listening for a sound. And you can just hear it. We put some oil on there, and that's a little bit stiff. There we go, let's work that in there a little bit. That's better. Right, here we go. That's what we're listening for. So that sound tells me that we've got good integrity in that valve guide, and that's making a really nice seal. If it didn't make that noise, it's because it's letting air through. So it could be that the valve guide is broken in some way, could be chipped, scored or something like that. That's going to make a really nice tight seal. That's exactly what we want. So that one I'm quite happy with. So the next step with this one is to just lay him down back onto the bench. Oh, there we go. Okay, and we're going to put the spring and everything back on there. Okay, so if you remember from before, we took the springs off, we took off to give these a wipe. We've got a bearing that goes in the bottom here, so you'll see there's a machined area at the bottom. We'll give that a good clean in a second. So I'm just giving this a wipe off to get any residual dirt and things off. So that's a bearing that allows this spring that sits on top to actually rotate freely within the engine. So if the valve spins for any reason, then rather than creating friction, it will allow that to spin as well. We've also got valve guides. So these are the new valve guides that I took off there. These ones will go on and they create a seal over the top to stop the oil and things coming out into the top. Otherwise it would allow oil to spray everywhere. And we have the collet that goes on top of the spring, and then we have these little collets, these little keys that fit into the groove at the top of our valve. So first thing we're going to do is clean off the area at the top here. Make sure that's nice and clean. Get all that mess out. Then we're going to put a tiny bit of oil, I think, onto our bearing as well, just so they don't go together dry. That's spinning nicely. We'll put our spring back on. We'll put our washer thing into the top there. Now, if you remember, when we took it all apart, we used the valve compressor. We're going to do exactly the same thing, but in reverse order. So, I'm going to hold all those pieces. Oh, I forgot to put the valve guide. Sorry, not the valve guide, the valve oil seal on there. So let's just put that on as well. Lovely. And right, so next step, tipping it on its side without dropping all those pieces, we're going to position the spring compressor on there, and opposite way of taking this apart, oh goodness me, it's all falling apart, we're going to compress that spring, make sure that's in a nice central position on the valve, and we'll start compressing that in until it starts to clamp them together, which is just about there. It's starting to put pressure on. Make sure we're centralized, and centralize this side. Okay, what I'm going to do is just spin this head round so you can see the working side of what we're trying to do here. I'm going to move my two little collets out of the way because we're going to pop those back in a second. So let's move this around. Wow, these things are so heavy. Okay, and as you can see, the valve compressor here is just compressing that spring down over the top, and what we're trying to do is get it so it's compressed enough that we can slide these little wedges, oops, goodness me, these wedges into the valve itself, and that will hold the top. So bear with me, let's take it down a little bit. It's looking pretty good there. And what we're going to do is just insert one. They're a little bit fiddly to get in. Sometimes you have to move the valve compressor around a little bit just to give yourself a bit more of a space on either side of the center of the valve. Needs a little bit more on that side, so let's just take him down a bit further. The further you compress this in, the easier it is to actually get the collet into position. There we go, that's starting to slide in now. Make sure they're both in position. What we do is we get them positioned, and then we can remove the valve spring compressor, and the collet will actually hold the valve in the right place, and we'll stop it from springing back the other way. Okay. It's very difficult to do this when you're working opposite to where you normally would. I'm just going to turn this over so I can see what I'm doing. That's a bit better. And just move the valve compressor just so I can get to where I need to see. It's a little bit tricky to get these things in there. There we go, that's one and two. So what I'm going to do, rather than ripping this off quickly, I'm going to pull it off ever so slowly, because what we're looking for is for these little collets to get caught into the ridge that runs around to the top of each of these valves. So they just literally hook in there, so as we pull this back, they will hook in and grip the top of the valve, and stop it from releasing the washer that we put over the top of the spring. There we go, that's looking pretty good actually. I'm happy with that. So just pull that right back and take the tool off and let's have a quick look. So as you can see there, the two wedges are in. Use the screwdriver as point. So the two wedges are in, they're holding the top of the valve same way that the other ones are, and that's holding the valve now under tension, so it's nicely closed on the other side. So inside the cylinder itself, it's closed up beautifully. So this one's giving me a little bit of difficulty. It's really tight to go in, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of heat around the cylinder head itself, just enough to warm it. Hopefully we can get that to expand and we can tap this in a bit easier. So I'm trying to keep the heat away from the actual valve guide itself, but get it into the cast of the iron head. Good. Give that a quick wipe. Yeah. So, just seeing there the valve stem coming through, so I'm happy with that. Next step, let's get ourselves a valve. Give it a good liberal spray of oil, and let's slide that in there. There we go. Okay, so next step with this one, same as we did for this, we're going to grind the surfaces on these ones. So we're going to just pop that back out a little way. There we go. We'll get some paste around the seating surfaces on here, the mating surfaces. I don't want to go too mad with this, but enough there that there's plenty to cover it. So get a good liberal coating. We'll be wiping all this off and cleaning it all off before we put it back together, because otherwise it will just cause wear and tear on the surfaces. So once again, case of closing that back up again, and then we put our drill back onto the end of the valve. There we go, and nice and slow, just in and out, get that mixture to cover over the valve guide, grind those surfaces in. And again, it's more to do with the cylinder head than the actual valves at this stage. The valves are brand new, so they've got really nice machined surfaces. This is really to cut the cylinder head so it meets the valve comfortably. Back the other way. And again, trick is not to go too mad. We don't want to overheat the valve or cause any burnishing. Just need it to go round and round, make a nice seat. Ooh, a bit fast there. I'm not putting too much pressure when I close it here, it's just enough to hear it grinding. Some people say that you're supposed to do this until you can hear the valve paste basically being squeezed out, but I like to just go backwards and forwards as it allows the valve paste to kind of reseat itself. Right, so there we go, one reassembled set of valves. All of these collets are sitting in there nice and neatly, giving it a really good visual check, make sure everything's in there, make sure we've got all of the oil seals on there for each one of them. And then if we take a look on the underside, there we go, we can see we've got all of our valves nicely seated. The next step is to give this thing a really good clean off, and then if you remember, we gave it a good oiling after we took it out of the acid bath to stop it from rusting. I'm not going to worry too much about these mating surfaces yet. These will be given a final clean before it goes back on the boat. What I am going to do is give it a really good wire brush and clean off, get some of this loose paint off, and then I'm going to spray paint the whole thing, covering over the top of the valves obviously, These faces can be cleaned off again afterwards with a razor blade, that's not a problem, but let's get this thing looking a bit tidier, ready to go back on the boat.